Hi Rob, a massive warm welcome to the Mason Frank International podcast. Our series links to careers and pathways and Salesforce in success. So I am going to be talking to Rob today around, I suppose, the contract market and also kind of, I suppose, recruitment across the Salesforce ecosystem in general. So Rob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Catherine. So yes, I am Rob Cowell. I am a marketing DevOps advocate these days, but I have lived by a few other titles. And as Catherine kind of suggested, I have been a contractor before a couple of times, as well as permanent, as well as working for partners. So I've kind of seen a broad spectrum of different types of roles there. But yeah, immediately preceding what I'm doing now, I was a contractor for about 3.5 years. So yeah, happy to explore some of that.
Awesome, amazing. Well, warm welcome. And I suppose we'll start with the first question. So would you like to kind of give us a review of the contract market from your perspective?
No, absolutely. I think there's a few factors that are allowing it to continue in good health at the moment. I think there's definitely an increase in specialisms, and people are certainly noticing that on both sides of the coin, whether you're the contractor or whether you're the client. Increasing number of clients are looking at things like CPQ implementations or field service implementations. These specialist skills that aren't necessarily core Salesforce and that require specific expertise in those platforms, which not everyone has got. And I think that really plays into the hands of the contract market, where yes, there are some fantastic generalists out there, but generally people will find a niche for themselves and capitalize on it. Quite literally, I mean, it is capitalism in its purest form. It's I have a skill, and on the other side, I have a need for that skill, and deals are done off the back of that. But I think that's kind of one of the sort of big contributory factors to the health of it. And of course, the other thing is that, fingers crossed, we are out of all the lockdown and pandemic side of things at the moment. It's obviously, not completely gone away, but I think we are now back to business as usual across all markets, which of course means a bounce back for projects and contracts.
No, absolutely. And I know that our contract division has been really busy this year. And I think sometimes if there is any kind of recession or insecurities within the market, then the contract market often becomes very buoyant, doesn't it? So absolutely. And I know that we support within kind of, I suppose, niche areas for both bench support for partners and for end users. And I think that it's all about having that niche expertise, isn't it, really? So what motivated you to contract, and how does sort of Salesforce support sort of small partners and contractors when they're sort of starting out and then developing their career in the contract world?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, certainly for my part, I had contracted before in an entirely different sector. So back in the distant past, I used to be a .NET developer and contracted that. And it was actually, ironically, on one of those contracts, it was when I first discovered Salesforce. And so I became kind of cross-functional in that way. But for the pure Salesforce contracting, I think it wasn't any sort of particular foresight. I think it was just sheer coincidence that I was working from home before it became fashionable. I set myself up as a small limited company and was contracting about a year before everyone was working from home. But that's kind of one of the strong draws that came for me, was the ability to find and pick and choose contracts and clients where they were perfectly happy for me to work remotely, which allowed me a much better work-life balance. And so, there was a little bit of travel to client site, but maybe only sort of 1 or 2 days a month. So that was kind of a strong attraction for me. But also, I think one of the other factors was, I had accumulated quite a lot of Salesforce experience. And for me, it was time to see, how can I put that out to a wider audience? How can I kind of distribute that knowledge across multiple projects, do some interesting things and get that kind of level of variety as well?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I know that a lot of our contracts are still, even now, remote or some hybrid working, depending on kind of, I suppose, the policies of those firms we're recruiting for. But I think that's a massive attraction, isn't it, in itself? And
Yeah.
it really helps from a DE&I perspective, because it gets a larger kind of, I suppose, cross-section workforce able to do those contracts as well. So what would you say that firms are doing? Are they doing anything different to retain this sort of contract Salesforce talent? What's your sort of top tips? What are they doing in the market?
Well, I think, the retention of contractors is always a challenging one. By definition, they are slightly more flexible in terms of onboarding and offboarding for clients, and that's the big draw from the client side of things. But I think from a contract point of view, it's get in there, do a good job, increase your chances. It really can be as simple as that. But I think a lot of companies are also looking at contractors not just to come and do the work, but more in that sort of trusted advisor capacity. You're brought in for your expertise, not so much, well, not solely for actually doing the work, but also because you've got that experience, you can guide and advise them. Or they may think, okay, we brought someone in for this project, but we know there's this other project coming up, and I think their input would be really useful, whether that's hands-on or whether it's thought leadership. And I think that's what you tend to find with a lot of the experienced contractors, because they've worked so many different projects and so many different organizations. There's a lot that they bring to the table for the client, and the client wants to keep those insights on board and use them to their best.
Yeah, and I think that's totally true. I think it's like near enough getting kind of separate advisory expertise in, isn't it, really? And and utilizing all of that skill set kind of as where possible. So I suppose the next question was how and when clients can use contractor support effectively within Salesforce. I think some of those questions you've probably answered. One thing that I know we're doing quite a lot of is this kind of health check piece. Have you got any kind of other kind of ideas around that and when contractors may be utilised?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of a Salesforce health check is popular amongst the contractor market. It's something that's very prescribed, very repeatable. It's something that's very structured, which makes it quite easy to move that skill set and that task from engagement to engagement. And so, for that reason, it's seen as quite a nice foot in the door, I guess, for a lot of folks in the contract market. They come and identify the challenges, and then the door is open to, but we can help you address those challenges. And I think that from a commercial sense, it's quite a nice technique. So I think, yeah, absolutely, that from that perspective of the health check thing, I think it serves two purposes. One is the client gets their health checked and gets advice on how to address that, and potentially a resource. And also, the contractors expand their network of potential clients as well.
Absolutely. And I think then they're more likely to get referral of additional business as well, aren't they, etc. And how motivated do you think contractors are by money now?
It's always been a factor. So, in the spirit of full disclosure, the last time I set up my company and went contracting, money was a strong driver for me. At the time that I switched over, I was a permanent employee, ironically, for Mason Frank themselves. I was actually working for you guys, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. But working inside the recruitment industry, you could see the significant returns that contractors were making on their opportunities, and I kind of decided that I'd quite like some of that. Plus, of course, the work-life balance factors that we talked about earlier. It seemed very much like a win-win situation for me. I am back in the permanent roles again, in a completely different sphere. I've somehow ended up in marketing, but I absolutely love it. And I think, I'd always said that to come out of contracting, it would take an exceptional role for me to do that. And luckily, the folks over at Gearset had that exceptional role It took me 10 years to get where I needed to be, but yeah, 10 years of experience.
Awesome. And you said previously you're off to Dreamforce in September. Have you got any other kind of top tips or any other events that you want to be kind of flagging to people out there in the market that they should be going to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that the nature of my role in marketing and being an advocate for our brand means I get to go to a lot of events. Some folks may not realize we record these podcasts in advance and they go out a little later. So by the time that folks are catching up with this episode, I will be about to go to Forcelandia in Portland, Oregon. At the time of recording today, we've got London's Calling coming up tomorrow. So hopefully we'll catch up a few folks there. And, by the time the recording goes out, people say, oh, I did see you at London's Calling, and everything will kind of past, present and future will come together. But yeah, there's a lot of events in the calendar. It's the summer season is pretty hectic. But it's great because, it's where we find our community, and our community isn't just, people using the product for the company I work for. It's the community of Salesforce across the board. It's potential clients and contractors, it's potential employers, it's opportunities and doors opening. And it's just a great chance to sort of compare those experiences. So events are definitely recommended for anyone that can get to them, no matter where they are.
Absolutely, they're supportive, they're a training opportunity, and they're fun, aren't they, as well? So it seems to be some of the core values at Salesforce. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Rob, today, and best of luck with it. And I look forward to catching up with you at London's Calling.